How do you walk away from someone who still feels like home? The sound of crutches echoed down the white hallway. Daniel's hands trembled as he gripped them tighter. His body felt heavy, like the floor was pulling him back, refusing to let him go. He took one step, then another. Each one burned, but not from pain in his legs, from the pain in his heart. Claire stood near the door, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her face looked calm, but her eyes betrayed her. They were tired, red, almost hollow. For a moment, Daniel wanted to say something, anything, to make her stay a little longer. But silence had become their language these days, and silence was louder than words. He looked at her one last time before turning toward the elevator. The walls around him felt too white, too clean, a cruel contrast to the mess inside him. The nurses smiled as he passed, offering polite nods, not knowing the weight of what he was leaving behind. When the elevator door slid shut, he caught one final glimpse of her reflection in the metal. She wasn't waving. She wasn't crying. She was just standing there, like someone watching a train leave, knowing it's not coming back. The ride down felt longer than his entire recovery. 3 months ago, he had been in the same building, wrapped in casts and pain, dreaming of walking again. Claire had been there every day then, holding his hand, feeding him, smiling even when he knew she was breaking inside. She had been his reason to heal. But somewhere between surgeries and sleepless nights, they both changed. Love that once burned bright turned quiet, tired, uncertain. He remembered how she used to read to him, her voice soft, her laughter making even the pain bearable. Then came the arguments, small at first, then sharp. She wanted him to rest. He wanted to prove he was still strong. She said he was shutting her out. He said she was pitying him. Both were wrong, and both were right. When he finally reached the exit, the cold wind hit his face like a reminder. Freedom isn't always sweet. It's sometimes just lonely. He limped toward the parking lot where his brother waited in the car, engine running, the radio low. Daniel forced a smile, climbed in, and looked back one last time. Claire was nowhere to be seen. The drive was quiet. His brother talked about work, about sports, about anything but her. Daniel nodded, pretending to listen. His eyes drifted to the world outside. Gray skies, people walking fast, their lives moving forward. His, however, felt stuck somewhere between what was and what could have been. When they reached his apartment, his brother helped him up the stairs. "You sure you'll be okay?" he asked. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, just need rest." But rest never came that night. The apartment smelled like dust and memories. Everything was where he'd left it before the accident. The coffee mug still near the sink, a jacket on the couch, her photo on the shelf. He hadn't moved anything. Maybe because he was waiting for her to come back, even if he didn't admit it. He sat on the couch, stretched his weak legs, and stared at his phone. No new messages, no missed calls, just silence, the kind that fills a room and makes your chest tighten. He picked up the photo frame, the one of him and Claire at the lake last summer. She had her arms around him, smiling like nothing in the world could ever hurt them. He placed it face down. It hurt too much to look at it. Hours passed. The clock ticked. The city outside grew quieter. He was about to go to bed when he felt something in his jacket pocket. He reached in and found a folded note. His breath caught. It was her handwriting. He unfolded it slowly, his eyes scanning every curve of her letters. "You need to heal, Daniel. Not just your legs, your heart too. Sometimes love means letting go before we destroy what's left of it. Don't hate me for walking away. I just don't know how to stay anymore." The paper trembled in his hands. He wanted to scream, but the words stayed trapped in his throat. She was gone, and it wasn't the accident that broke him. It was this. He lay back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Her words repeated in his mind like a song he couldn't turn off. "Heal your heart. Don't hate me. I don't know how to stay." He whispered, "Then why did you make me believe you would?" The rain started outside, soft at first, then heavier. Drops hit the window in a slow rhythm that matched the pounding in his chest. He watched them slide down the glass, merging, separating, like two people who once fit perfectly, now moving in opposite directions. His phone buzzed once. A message from an unknown number. "Hope you're okay." For a second, his heart jumped. But it was just an old friend from rehab, not her, not the one he wanted. He turned off the lights, closed his eyes, and tried to sleep. But dreams came in fragments. Her laughter, the hospital room, the moment she stopped holding his hand. When he woke before dawn, the note was still on the table beside him. He read it again and again until the ink almost blurred. He wondered if she cried while writing it. He wondered if she meant goodbye or come find me. He wondered too much, and that was the problem. By morning, the rain had stopped. The world outside looked washed clean, but inside he still felt heavy. He moved to the window, his crutches beside him, and looked at the street below. Cars passing, people talking, life moving on. He whispered, "Maybe I should too." Then, as he reached for his phone to delete her number, the screen lit up. Claire. Her name, after weeks of silence. His heart froze. The air around him suddenly felt thinner. He didn't know whether to answer or let it ring. He pressed his thumb on the screen, and the world seemed to stop. Her voice was soft, almost uncertain. "Hey, I heard you were discharged." He swallowed. "Yeah, yesterday." A pause. Then she said, "I just wanted to say I'm proud of you." He smiled faintly, trying to sound calm. "You shouldn't be. I'm still learning how to walk." She replied quietly, "Then don't walk alone." And before he could say anything else, the call ended. He stood there, staring at his reflection in the dark phone screen. Her words lingered, echoing louder than any goodbye. Don't walk alone. He didn't know what it meant. A memory? A promise? Or another kind of goodbye? The city woke outside his window, sunlight slowly spilling into the room. He closed his eyes and took one careful step forward, not with his legs, but with something deeper. Something that still believed she might come back. Yet as he stood there, the silence returned, wrapping around him once again. And in that stillness, one thought refused to leave him. If she ever did come back, would he still have the strength to walk toward her? Daniel stared at the photo on his phone. Him walking out of the hospital, shoulders hunched, face tired. Someone had taken it from across the street, and beneath it, the message, "I never stopped watching you." His heart jumped. That handwriting, that tone, it had to be Claire. He sat down, his legs weak again, not from pain this time, but from something else. Confusion mixed with hope. The rain outside had stopped, but inside, everything still felt stormy. He typed back quickly, "Claire, where are you?" No reply. Minutes passed. Then, just when he thought she wouldn't answer, another message appeared. "I saw your photo walking again. I'm proud of you." He exhaled slowly. It was her. For a moment, the apartment didn't feel so empty anymore. He typed back, "It still hurts to walk." The dots blinked. Then her reply came, "Then don't walk alone." Those words, the same ones she'd said during their call, came rushing back like a wave. He didn't know if she meant it as comfort or invitation, but his heart didn't care. He texted again, "Can we meet?" She replied after a long pause, "Tomorrow. The cafe near the park, noon." Daniel barely slept that night. His body was exhausted, but his mind was alive. Every hour felt like a countdown to something he didn't fully understand. By morning, he dressed carefully, not because of vanity, but because it mattered. Seeing her mattered. The cafe hadn't changed. The same old brick walls, the same smell of roasted beans, and the same small table by the window, their table. He walked in slowly, feeling every gaze but searching only for one face. And then he saw her, Claire. She looked different. Her hair shorter, her smile smaller, but her eyes, those same deep eyes, still carried the warmth that once made him forget everything else. She stood up as he approached. "Hey," she said softly. He smiled. "Hey." They sat down. For a while, neither spoke. The air between them was full of unspoken things, apologies, questions, memories that refused to fade. The waiter came. They both ordered coffee, pretending it was a normal meeting. But nothing about it was normal. She was the first to speak. "You look better," she said, forcing a small smile. "I feel better," he replied, still learning how to stand without falling. Her eyes softened. "You always did stand back up." There was a pause, long enough for him to notice the ring missing from her finger. He tried not to stare, but she noticed anyway. "I took it off," she said quietly before he could ask. "Not because I stopped caring, but because I didn't know what we were anymore." He nodded. "I get it. Do you?" she asked. "Maybe not," he admitted. "But I'm trying." The coffee came, the same aroma that used to fill their weekends together. He watched her stir the sugar, her hands trembling slightly. He wanted to reach out, to hold them steady, but he stopped himself. Too much had changed. She broke the silence again. "After the accident, I didn't know how to help you. You shut me out." "I didn't mean to," he said quickly. "I just didn't want you to see me like that. Weak." She looked at him with quiet sadness. "You weren't weak, Daniel. You were just hurt. There's a difference." He looked down. "I thought if I could walk again, maybe things could go back to normal." She smiled faintly. "Normal isn't what we need. Maybe we just need real." Their eyes met again. It was the same feeling he'd tried to forget, but it came rushing back. Familiar, painful, beautiful. He didn't know what to say, so he just asked, "Why did you send that photo?" She hesitated. "Because I missed you. Because I still care." He felt his chest tighten. "Then why did you leave?" Her voice dropped. "Because I thought staying would hurt you more." He leaned forward. "You were wrong." She looked up, and for the first time in months, he saw tears in her eyes. The cafe grew busier around them, laughter and music blending in the background, but for them, the world had narrowed down to that small corner table. Every word felt heavy, every silence louder than before. She reached across the table, her hand brushed against his. A spark, tiny, fragile, but real. "I wanted to call so many times," she whispered. "But I thought you needed space." "Space only made me realize what I was missing," he said softly. Her lips trembled into a faint smile. "You always know what to say." He shook his head. "Not really. If I did, you'd still be here." For the first time, she laughed. Quietly, brokenly, the kind of laugh that hides tears. And just like that, for a few seconds, it felt like old times again. Then, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and the smile faded instantly. He noticed the change. "What is it?" She stood up abruptly. "I have to go." "It's urgent," he frowned. "Claire, wait." She grabbed her bag, eyes darting away. "I'll call you." Before he could say anything else, she was already halfway to the door. "Claire!" he called after her. But she didn't turn back. The bell above the cafe door chimed as she left, leaving behind the smell of her perfume and her half-finished coffee. Daniel sat there, frozen. Everything had felt so close, like healing was finally possible. And then, in one moment, it all vanished again. He looked down and saw something on her chair, a pale blue scarf. The one she used to wear when they'd go walking by the lake. He picked it up slowly, his hands shaking. The fabric was soft, familiar. He pressed it against his chest and closed his eyes. Outside, the wind began to rise, sweeping leaves down the street. Inside, Daniel felt the old ache return, the feeling of losing something twice. He didn't know what had pulled her away this time. Maybe family, maybe fear, maybe she just wasn't ready. But the scarf in his hand told a different story, that she hadn't planned to disappear. Not this time. He waited for her call that night. Then the next, nothing came. By the third day, he couldn't stand the silence anymore. He went back to the cafe, hoping she might show up, maybe explain, maybe smile again. But the chair across from him stayed empty. The waiter recognized him, gave a small nod, and asked, "The usual?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Yeah, the usual." He sat there for an hour, sipping cold coffee, staring at the door. Every time the bell chimed, his heart jumped. only to sink again when it wasn't her. When he finally left, the evening light painted the street gold. He walked slowly, the scarf wrapped around his hand. The city looked alive, but he felt invisible. He passed the park where they once sat for hours, sharing dreams that never came true. Everything looked the same, except her absence. At home, he placed the scarf on the table next to her letter from the hospital. 2 pieces of her, left behind like clues in a story that refused to end. He touched the scarf once more. "You came back once," he whispered. "Maybe you'll do it again." The room felt too quiet again, and the silence pressed against his chest. He sat there, replaying every word from the cafe, every glance, every unfinished moment. He thought of her trembling hands, her half-smile, the way she said, "Maybe we just need real. Real." The word echoed in his head like a promise waiting to be kept. But as night fell, doubt crept in again. What if she was gone for good this time? What if that call never came? What if love only returned long enough to remind him of what he'd lost? He picked up his phone, stared at her contact name, Claire. His thumb hovered over the call button. He hesitated, then pressed it. 1 ring, 2, 3, then voicemail. He sighed. "It's me," he said quietly. "I don't know what happened, but I'm here. You don't have to walk alone either." He ended the call, set the phone down, and sat in silence. Then, a vibration. His heart leapt. A message. From her, he opened it fast. It was a photo, the same scarf, draped over a hospital chair, and below it, her message. "I didn't want to tell you until it was real. But I'm back where it all started." Daniel stared at the message on his phone. "I didn't want to tell you until it was real. But I'm back where it all started. The hospital." His fingers went cold. For a moment he couldn't move. The world outside his window was quiet, but inside his chest, everything felt like thunder. He grabbed his jacket and the scarf she left behind and limped toward the door. He didn't know what had happened to her, only that he couldn't lose her again. The drive to the hospital felt endless. The same streets, the same traffic lights, the same place where his heart had broken months ago. He parked, took his crutches, and walked fast through the rain. Each step hurt, but the fear hurt more. At the reception, he asked, "Claire Bennett, she's here?" The nurse looked through her computer, then nodded. "Room 412, 4th floor." His heart raced. "Is she okay?" The nurse paused, her tone soft. "She's stable. You can go see her, stable." The word eased him for a second, then scared him more. What was she stable from? He hurried down the hallway, his crutches clicking against the floor. The same smell of disinfectant filled the air, the same hum of machines, the same emptiness. He reached the door and stopped. For a second he couldn't breathe. Then he pushed it open. Claire sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, staring outside. Her hair was slightly messy, her face pale, but when she turned and saw him, her eyes filled instantly. "Daniel," she whispered. He dropped the scarf on the chair and went to her. "What happened?" She smiled weakly. "You came." "Of course I came." His voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" She looked down at her hands. "I didn't want to scare you. I thought I could handle it." He pulled a chair closer, his movements slow. "Handle what?" She hesitated. "It's nothing life-threatening," she said quickly, seeing the panic in his face. "Just exhaustion. I've been working too much, skipping meals. My body finally gave up." He exhaled, half in relief, half in disbelief. "You scared me." She gave a small laugh. "You always say that." He shook his head. "Because it's always true." For a moment, silence filled the room. Not the cold kind, but something warm, quiet, full of things they didn't need to say. She reached for his hand and he let her. Their fingers fit together the same way they always had, as if time hadn't passed at all. "I saw your text," he said softly. "You said you were proud of me." "I am," she whispered. "You didn't give up, even when I wasn't there." He looked at her, his voice low. "But you were there, every day, in every step." Her eyes glistened. "Daniel." He smiled faintly. You're the reason I learned to walk again. Now let me be the reason you don't fall apart." The emotion between them was thick, real, the kind of feeling that doesn't need grand gestures. Just presence, just truth. Hours passed. They talked about small things, her job, his therapy, old memories that still made them laugh. She told him about moving to Seattle, about her mother's illness, about nights when she wanted to call him but couldn't. He listened quietly, every word carving a deeper mark inside him. "You could have told me," he said finally. "I was afraid," she admitted. "Afraid you'd think I left because I didn't love you." He looked at her steadily. "You left because you loved me." Her eyes widened. "How did you—" "Because that's exactly what I would have done." She smiled, that soft, broken smile he'd missed. By evening, she started to look tired. He stood up, adjusting his crutches. "You should rest. I'll come back tomorrow." She nodded, her voice faint. "Promise?" "Promise." As he reached the door, she called out, "Daniel?" He turned. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For still believing in me," he smiled. "I never stopped." He walked down the hallway with lighter steps than he'd had in months. For the first time, it felt like something was healing. Not just between them, but inside them. The next morning, he arrived early with flowers and her favorite coffee. He knocked, smiling. "Claire, I brought—" The room was empty. The bed was made. The window open, the blanket folded neatly on the chair. No sign of her. Panic hit him instantly. He called the nurse. "The woman in this room, Claire Bennett. Where is she?" The nurse looked confused. "She was discharged last night." "What?" "She was supposed to rest." "She insisted," the nurse said. "Said she had to go somewhere important. Somewhere important." The words hit him like a riddle. He sat down on the edge of the bed, her absence swallowing the room whole. He called her. No answer. Texted her. Nothing. It felt like déjà vu, losing her all over again, right when she'd come back into his life. Then he noticed something under the pillow, a folded piece of paper. His heart pounded as he opened it. "Daniel, I didn't want you to see me like that again. Weak, hooked to machines. You taught me how to stand. Now it's my turn to walk, even if it's far away. Don't come looking for me. You deserve peace. You deserve someone who doesn't keep running." His eyes burned. He crushed the paper in his hand, fighting the tears that threatened to fall. He whispered, "You think peace comes without you?" He left the hospital, the sky gray and heavy. The rain began again, soft, quiet, like a memory repeating itself. He walked to his car, his steps uneven, his heart heavier than before. The drive home was a blur. Every red light, every turn, every shadow reminded him of her. When he finally reached his apartment, he placed the flowers on the table beside the scarf. Now there were 3 things: the scarf, the letter from the hospital, and this new note. A timeline of love and leaving. He sat in the dark for a long time. His phone stayed silent. No messages, no calls, just emptiness. Days turned into weeks. He went back to work, tried to focus, tried to live like everything was normal. But her absence filled every quiet moment. Sometimes he'd catch himself making 2 cups of coffee instead of 1. Other times, he'd find himself checking his phone at midnight, hoping for her name to appear again. He started walking in the park every evening, the same place where they used to sit together. The leaves had turned golden now, the air colder, but he kept going. One step after another, he told himself he wasn't waiting, just remembering. Then one evening, as he walked past their old bench, something caught his eye. A small envelope pinned under a rock, his name written on it in her handwriting. His hands shook as he opened it. "If you found this, it means you didn't give up. I knew you wouldn't. I'm not gone forever, Daniel. Just trying to heal somewhere quiet. You once told me not to walk alone. I'm trying to keep that promise, even if it's from a distance. Love always, Claire." He read the letter 3 times, every word cutting and healing at the same time. He whispered into the wind, "Then I'll wait, even if it takes forever." The next morning, he boxed up the scarf, the notes, the hospital bracelet she'd left behind, and placed them on a shelf. Not as memories, but as reminders that love wasn't over, just paused. Winter came. Snow covered the park, the roads, and the city like a white blanket of silence. Daniel kept walking every day. He didn't know what he was hoping for. A letter, a call, maybe just a sign. Then, one night, as he was locking his door, he heard a knock. 3 slow, soft knocks. He opened it and froze. Claire stood there, drenched in snow, trembling, clutching the same blue scarf. Her lips parted, her eyes glistening. "I couldn't stay away," she whispered. "Every step felt wrong without you." His breath caught. "You came back." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I didn't know where else to go." He took a step forward, his voice shaking. "You don't ever have to leave again." She smiled faintly, her words barely a whisper. "Then let me in." The snow fell softly around them as Daniel stood in the doorway, staring at Claire, soaked, shivering, clutching that old blue scarf like a lifeline. For a moment he couldn't move. Everything he'd wanted for months was standing right in front of him, yet something felt off. His eyes fell on the suitcase beside her, a hospital tag still hanging from the handle. Patient transfer, Claire Bennett, ongoing observation. His voice broke the silence. "Claire, what's going on?" She hesitated, her lips trembling. "Can I come in first?" He nodded quickly and stepped aside. She entered slowly, her wet shoes leaving faint marks on the floor. The warmth of the apartment wrapped around her, but her face stayed pale. Daniel closed the door, heart pounding. She sat on the couch, clutching the scarf tighter, avoiding his eyes. He knelt in front of her, searching for the truth she wasn't saying. "Claire, tell me what this is. What's happening to you?" For a moment she said nothing. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "I didn't want you to find out like this. The hospital wasn't just exhaustion. They found something, a condition." His stomach twisted. "What kind of condition?" "Something with my heart," she said quietly. "It's genetic. I've known for a while, but it got worse recently. They're still running tests. I'm okay for now. But it's unpredictable." Daniel froze. "You mean you've been dealing with this alone?" Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't want you to see me fall apart again. You finally learned to walk without me. I couldn't make you carry me through another storm." He stood, pacing the room, anger and pain battling inside him. "Claire, you don't get it. I never wanted to walk without you." She looked up at him, her face trembling. "Then why does it feel like you kept moving forward even when I stopped?" "Because I thought you wanted me to," he snapped, then stopped himself. His voice softened. "I thought that's what love meant. Letting go when the other person needs space." She shook her head slowly. "Love isn't space, Daniel. It's presence, even when it hurts." For a few seconds, they just stared at each other. Two people who had fought too many quiet wars with themselves. He knelt again and took her hands gently. "You don't have to fight this alone anymore. Not this time." Her tears finally fell. "I don't know how to let someone stay when I might not." He squeezed her hands. "Then let me stay anyway." The words hung in the air like a promise neither of them had the strength to break. The days that followed blurred into soft mornings and slow nights. Claire stayed with him, her health fragile but her spirit brighter than it had been in months. Daniel cooked for her, made her laugh, helped her take slow walks in the snow-covered park. Sometimes she'd get tired halfway, and he'd just stand beside her, letting her rest her head on his shoulder. "Remember when you said you'd walk again just to dance with me?" she asked one evening, her smile faint but playful. He laughed. "I never forgot. I just didn't know the song would take this long to start." She smiled. "Then let's start it now." They danced in the living room, barefoot on the wooden floor, no music, just the sound of the wind outside and their quiet laughter. For a few minutes, it felt like the world had stopped spinning, like all the pain and distance had led them back here for a reason. But as the days passed, Daniel began to notice little things. The way she'd press her chest when she thought he wasn't looking, how her hands trembled slightly when she poured tea. The times she smiled through sudden fatigue. He wanted to believe it was nothing, but his heart knew better. One morning, he woke to find her sitting by the window, wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the gray dawn. Couldn't sleep? He asked softly. She turned to him, her voice weak. I just wanted to see the sunrise. He frowned. You see it every day, she smiled gently. Not like this one. Something in her tone made him freeze. Claire? She shook her head, tears forming. Don't look at me like that. I'm not giving up. I just want to remember this. Us. Like this. Peaceful. He walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her. You'll see 1,000 more sunrises with me. She leaned back into him. Promise? Promise. But deep down, fear began to whisper again. The kind that hides behind hope. Weeks passed. Her checkups continued. Some days were good, others were not. But through it all, they stayed together, quietly, fiercely. He learned to cook healthier meals for her. She filled the house with warmth again. One afternoon, while sorting through an old drawer, Daniel found something. An old envelope addressed to him. His heart sank when he saw her handwriting. The letter looked old, faded, written sometime during her first hospital stay. He hesitated, then opened it. Daniel, if you ever find this, it means I wasn't brave enough to tell you face to face, I love you. But love isn't always about staying. Sometimes it's about knowing when to leave so the other person can keep living. If I ever disappear again, please don't wait for me. Live, walk, breathe. And if I'm lucky enough to come back, maybe we'll find each other again, stronger. He read it twice, then looked toward the window where she was napping. He walked over, sat beside her quietly, and held her hand. She stirred slightly and whispered, half asleep, What's wrong? He smiled. Nothing, just thinking how lucky I am that you didn't disappear again. She smiled faintly, her eyes still closed. I almost did. He kissed her forehead. Not anymore. But life, as always, has its own timing. A few days later, they were driving back from a follow-up appointment when the snow began to fall heavier. She looked out the window, watching the flakes blur against the light. It's beautiful, she said softly. He smiled. You always loved snow. It feels like forgiveness, she whispered. They drove in silence for a while. Then suddenly, her hand slipped from her lap and fell to her side. Claire? He turned, panic rising. Claire? Her eyes fluttered, her breathing shallow. He pulled over, calling her name again and again. Her head rested against the window, her lips pale. He grabbed his phone, dialing emergency services with shaking hands. By the time they reached the hospital, his mind was spinning. The same hallways, the same smell, the same helplessness. It was like being trapped in a circle he couldn't break. He waited outside the emergency room, heart pounding in his throat. Every second felt endless. When the doctor finally came out, Daniel stood immediately. Is she okay? The doctor sighed. We stabilized her. But her condition's getting worse. We'll need to keep her under observation. Daniel nodded numbly, his voice low. Can I see her? When he entered the room, Claire was awake, weak, but smiling. Hey, she whispered. He sat beside her, taking her hand. You scared me again. She tried to laugh, but it came out as a shaky breath. You always say that. Because you always do. I'm sorry, she said softly. I just didn't want you to see me like this again. He shook his head, tears in his eyes. I'd rather see you like this than not see you at all, she smiled faintly. Then stay. I'm not going anywhere, he whispered. She closed her eyes, her breathing steady but slow. He sat there through the night, holding her hand, afraid that if he let go, she might fade away. When dawn came, sunlight spilled across the room, gentle and quiet. She opened her eyes and whispered, Do you remember what you said when you first learned to walk again? He nodded. Yeah. I said I'd never take another step without you. She smiled weakly. Then don't start now. He kissed her hand, his voice breaking. I won't. Days turned into weeks again. She recovered slowly, and Daniel stayed by her side every step of the way. The doctors were hopeful, cautious but hopeful. He helped her walk again, just like she had helped him months ago. One evening, As they sat watching the sunset from the hospital garden, she turned to him and said, "I walked out of your life once, barely able to move my legs. This time I'm walking back in, and I'm not leaving again." He smiled, tears in his eyes. "Then let's walk together, no matter how slow." She nodded. "As long as it's with you." The world around them felt still. Two broken hearts had found a rhythm again, fragile, real, and full of quiet courage. But just as peace began to settle, her phone buzzed on the bench beside her. She glanced at it and froze. Daniel noticed. "What is it?" She handed him the phone with trembling hands. It was a message. From Dr. L. Harper, Cardiology. The text read, "Claire, we've received your test results. Please come in immediately. It's urgent."